Ladies and gentlemen, we are here live on the Chase's Sports News YouTube channel. For those of you seeing it after, it'll be on the Cool Sports Network. I am your host, Chase Coburn. Today, we are joined by a very special guest. The MAAC tournament in Atlantic City has begun. We're currently in the middle of the game between the Siena Saints and the Rider Broncos in Atlantic City, 8th seed versus 9th seed, to preview the remainder of this tournament and see who's going to get the automatic bid to the NCAA tournament from the MAAC. On the men's side, we've been speaking with some coaches. Today, we're joined by one of the best journalists in the MAAC from Daily Dose of Hoops, Jaden Daly. Jaden, thank you so much for joining me today. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me, Chase. I appreciate the introduction. You're far too kind, my friend. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We know you've been doing some great things. U.S. Basketball Writers Association is a lot of really great things. Real quick before we get started, just tell the audience about what exactly you do before we break down the great games that are going to happen here in Atlantic City.
Yeah, sure. Well, for the past 15 years, I've run Daily Dose of Hoops, and I've expanded throughout the New York, New Jersey area, even into Connecticut, covering mainly the MAAC and the Big East, but we do a lot more than just that. We do Rutgers as well. We do Hofstra, and now we've done some more NEC coverage as well. I'm actually watching the NEC championship game in the background, a 16-16 game late in the first half between Central Connecticut and St. Francis University. So it's a busy time of year, and my staff and I are just trying to make sure everything's all covered.
That's amazing, and obviously you're doing some incredible things with Daily Dose of Hoops. I did not put it in the description, fans, but please be sure to check out Jaden's work again. Just look up Daily Dose of Hoops. It'll be right there. He's doing some great coverage there, as he mentioned, kind of this whole New York metro area of the teams he's covering. So we really appreciate him taking the time as well. Please be sure to check out his work. All right, Jaden, let's talk about this tournament. I'm going to pull up the bracket right here. What a tournament we have in store. That Rider Siena game, 8-9 on the top left of your screen is currently going on. Based on my account right now, it's currently a 64-61 battle between Siena and Rider. Now, I know you cover other conferences, as you mentioned, but the MAAC is one of the primary conferences that you cover. Overall, when you take a look at this bracket and when the regular season ended, what were your initial thoughts? Who's benefiting? We're talking about this new format. Who's benefiting from this format? Who's not? Just what do you make of the bracket that's in front of you?
I'll tell you this, as the regular season champion, I think Quinnipiac has a very rough draw. I think they're not going to have it easy between either Rider or Siena, whoever wins this game tonight. And then should they get through that, you're looking at an Iona-Manhattan game on Wednesday night that's going to go down to the wire. Both of those teams have played each other close, and both of those teams have given given Quinnipiac fits throughout the year as well. So that semifinal on Friday, if those teams are fortunate enough to get there, is going to be a battle. I do think the bottom half of the bracket sets up well for a team like Merrimack as the number 2 seed, going up against Mount St. Mary's or Marist. Marist has lost 4 in a row to end the regular season. And then the Sacred Heart Fairfield winner, that game goes on later tonight. The winner of that game plays Merrimack in the quarterfinals. I think the bottom half of the draw is a lot more favorable than the top, but this is the MAAC, Chase. Anything can happen. We've seen it over the years. Only twice has the number 1 seed won this tournament since 2010.
I think you are really right. I mean, when you just kind of sit back and take a look, that is a tough ride for Quinnipiac, and just the way that it lined up. Mount St. Mary's and Marist are 2 very talented basketball teams, 2 teams that have been kind of creeping toward higher seeds. Like, a lot of people thought Marist was going to be number 1 in this conference after the regular season, and then you have Mount St. Mary's, who a lot of people thought could have been a number 4 seed, and then they fell down to 6. Both teams kind of cold here in the tournament. I do want to give a huge shout out to one of our top viewers, Jack Mano. Let's go Sacred Heart. I don't know if I'm going to say that. It's very tough for me to speak with 2 Fairfield teams right there between Sacred Heart and Fairfield. As an unbiased journalist, let's cover this game. Jaden, I saw you at the Fairfield-Quinnipiac game on Saturday night. Obviously, not a full roster for Quinnipiac, but 35 points for Prophet Johnson. We know what Braden Sparks could do when Lou Bleachmore gets hot. We know Dion Perry can shoot the long ball, like the really long ball, too, if it's against Marist on ESPNU. So, Jayden, just talk to me about what that matchup, what that's going to entail later tonight here, because that is a really, really great matchup on ESPN Plus that many metrics have going down to the wire.
Yeah, I do want to see how Fairfield can bounced back from an emotional game on Saturday where it had to fight for its postseason life against Quinnipiac, and that game was not over until late in the second half. You talk about Quinnipiac resting three of its starters in Amari Monroe, Paul Otieno, and Savion Lewis, but that game was still tied with 4 minutes to go before Fairfield used a 12-0 run to pull away. So I'm interested to see how the Stags can uphold the momentum against the Sacred Heart team that has the second best offense in the conference. When you have a Tanner Thomas or a Griffin Baruch or even a Bryce Johnson down low who can shoot and make things happen and pick up the tempo, it's going to be interesting to see Fairfield here because the Stags are a little more conventional in the way they run offense. They're not going to get up and down the floor as fast as Sacred Heart. So I think they're going to want to slow the Pioneers down and make it a little harder on Makai Connor, the freshman point guard. So I want to see how that goes. And I think defensively, that's where Fairfield has the advantage. We've seen Sacred Heart get big leads, but not be able to sustain them on the defensive end. So if Fairfield can get a couple of runouts and get a couple of easy buckets, this game is right there for both sides.
That's something they were able to do really well against Quinnipiac, kind of quickly getting steals and working in transition, especially Braden Sparks and Prophet Johnson, who I feel like recently have emerged as the two top players for Fairfield. I mean, someone right here credentialed for Fairfield Stags men's and women's basketball the entire season. Watching these games, watching every game, analyzing it from a journalism view, I just think that with Fairfield, Prophet's great, Braden's great, Lou's great. They're reliable. To me, I think the two X factors that could change Fairfield from a good team to a great team are Peyton Smith and Dion Perry. Because when those guys have been on this year, it's been very rare been able to get them together. Peyton Smith has kind of been banged up at times, so he hasn't been able to play as much time as Coach Casey and this Fairfield staff would have hoped. But we've seen games this year where Perry's been the best offensive player on the floor, where he's taken over the game single-handedly. And then you saw to end the season against Quinnipiac, now that Peyton Smith's finally healthy, what he is capable of. Now, his issue is clearly getting in foul trouble. It's something he's struggled with in both his freshman and sophomore years here at Fairfield. But if Peyton Smith can get going and Dion Perry can get going, that's going to be tough for Sacred Heart to stop. The counter argument to that is that Sacred Heart, you're right, it's just a very fast-paced, incredible offensive team. And I think the MAAC all rookie team recipient, Makai Connor, is just a perfect example of what they do because he can hit the big shot, as can Ralph Byer, one of their other freshmen, but he's also so great at facilitating their offense. They just have so many different ways to beat you, and Coach Latina has had their hand multiple times this season. I do want to say real quick before we kind of move on to other sides of the bracket, what does it say that these two teams have played? This is going to be their third matchup in 5 weeks, and Sacred Heart's beaten them twice. Is there something in your mind that you believe makes it trickier for Sacred Heart to win with Fairfield losing to them twice in 5 weeks? Like, do you think eventually just the bouncers are going to roll Fairfield's way, or is that not kind of in your thought process as you look forward to tonight's game at 8:30 p.m. Eastern on ESPN+?
It's very possible. I did pick Sacred Heart to win, but it wouldn't shock me if Fairfield won. It's very hard to beat the same team 3 times in a row in one season, and Fairfield had never lost to Sacred Heart until this year. So you have that playing into the Stags' hands. You also have the desperation factor now where you're in a win-or-go-home setting in the MAAC tournament, and Fairfield is coming in with the momentum, with the emotion of Saturday's win over Quinnipiac. So I do think that's going to play a factor. You talked about Perry, and you also talked about Smith. I'll add a third X factor in Jamie Burgins, the Drexel transfer. I think his presence here is extremely undervalued because he was
incredible against Mount St. Mary's, not last Friday, the Friday before, in that home win over the 6th seed in this conference. He was marvelous. He hit the big shot down the stretch as well.
Mm-hmm. His veteran experience from playing the CAA tournament with Drexel the past couple of years is going to come into play for a younger Fairfield squad. If Chris Casey can get him going off the bench and he can step up and hit a couple of big shots, this could be Fairfield's night. I like his presence in this game a lot, especially with Sacred Heart being a little younger as well. And then Antoine Hill still not completely 100% off the back injury that cost him Thursday's game against Manhattan. He played off the bench Saturday at Iona, but he's still not at full health. So that'll be interesting to monitor as well.
Just kind of checking in here. We got a really tight game on the 8-9 side of the bracket. That's top left for the audience that is watching. Siena Saints versus the Rider Broncos, 71-69 with 3:27 to play currently on my views. So that's a very tight game that we're obviously going to continue to keep an eye on here as we live stream, as we kind of preview this MAAC tournament. Again, the tournament just started with that game between Siena and Rider. First of all, I kind of want to take a pause for a second because that Saturday was insane. Obviously, Fairfield won. They knew what was on the line. You win, you're in. They did kind of they simply had the better record. So you win, you're in, but they did not own tiebreakers. Niagara had a chance to get in there, though Ryder was able to pull away. Then St. Peter's could have gotten in after they beat Canisius, but again, Fairfield ruining the hopes of both teams as they win that game on Saturday. What are your thoughts overall on this new format of the MAAC tournament? You add Sacred Heart, you add Merrimack. Instead of having all 13 teams, only 10 qualify. You have Niagara, Canisius, and St. Peter's all sitting home, not even qualifying for their conference tournament in Atlantic City. And kind of the added question to that is, Sacred Heart's the reigning champion of this conference. They beat Fairfield in the championship game last year, and now they're not even being represented with an opportunity to go to the NCAA tournament, a program that was in the Elite Eight just a few years ago. Yes, different coach, different roster, but it still feels wrong in a sense. Not that I'm against it, and we'll see how it plays out. Is there part of you that maybe is skeptical about how this newly formatted MAAC tournament is going to pan out, and that you have the reigning champion of the conference currently sitting home on their butts with no opportunity to be represented at this stage?
Yeah, it's not the most favorable or the friendliest circumstances where a team like St. Peter's that has now become a national brand thanks to the Cinderella run from 3 years ago, and then backing it up 2 years later with a MAAC championship win. Now they're watching the tournament at home in Jersey City and not getting in. I didn't know how this would work, where for the first time in the history of the conference, not everyone is going to make the tournament. But what it did do, and I'm going to play devil's advocate here, was it made the last couple of weeks of the regular season a lot more compelling. I look back to the last week of the baseball season in 2011 and that insane last day where you had the Rays winning the AL East on an Evan Longoria walk-off home run, and then the Boston Red Sox getting knocked out of the wild card about maybe 10 or 15 minutes later, where the Yankees got the last AL playoff spot. I think we had a little something comparable to that in the MAAC with St. Peter's defeating Canisius and then having to wait it out for about 4 or 5 hours to see what Fairfield did and having its fate rest in another team's hands. It's good and it's bad. And I think we saw both sides of the spectrum the way it turned out last Saturday.
Let's take a look here at the bracket. I am really curious to see how this pans out because I'm someone who isn't against this format of the tournament at all. But then again, you look back and you don't see St. Peter's there, and you're like, how are the Peacocks not even in the MAAC tournament? So it's a tricky situation, and we'll see. Now, I do want to ask you, right? You've been around college basketball for a very long time. You've been covering MAAC basketball for a very long time. Do you think this is something that will last? Like, do you actually think this is going to work? Because there are positives and negatives to most moves that are made in college basketball. It's not black and white. So do you believe that this is going to work and that you're going to get the fans' response in terms of the playoff basketball and you're going to keep this? Or do you think you're going to see all 13 teams represented over the next few years?
I don't know. I do want to see how the MAAC assesses this going into next season. It's something that I'll probably talk to Travis Talatasi, the commissioner, about at some point in the future to see now that he's experienced both situations where he's had a tournament with everyone in it and now has a tournament where only the top 10 get in. There are, as you said, Chase, positives and negatives to the situation. I still think it'll take another year to really assess the impact on either side a lot more and a little better. And we'll see what happens there. They've already made changes to the format for next year. The tournament's going to move back up a week where it had been until the move to Atlantic City. You're not going to conflict with the Big East and the ACC anymore like you have the last few years with the MAAC. So you'll get more fans there. You'll get a lot more viewers there because the one compromise in moving to Atlantic City at first was having to give up the Monday night time slot before Selection Sunday, which generated a lot more attention and got the casual fan fixated on the MAC, if only for a couple hours. But you never know. Sometimes one game can do a lot of good for a young fan. And I speak from someone whose first game he watched start to finish was the 1993 national championship game, and it's why I grew up a North Carolina fan.
That's amazing. I mean, that's a whole other conversation about the Tar Heels and the validity of that team and the legitimacy of them as we head into March Madness. Let's take a look back at this bracket. We talked about Rider Siena, which is still going on right now in a very tight game, 74-73 as we speak. Rider with a minute 53 to go here in the second. Siena was a favorite, though the lower seed. So it will be very interesting. It will be very interesting to see who pans out in that match. We spoke about Fairfield Sacred Heart again. That's later in just about 40 minutes here at ESPN Plus, 8:30 p.m. Eastern. Let's talk about Iona Manhattan. You guys will see this later for the audience. I actually literally just got off an interview before this with Manhattan head coach John Gallagher. He seems confident. Second year as a coach, he keeps saying, that the team's motto: "Why not us? Why not now?" This team's kind of jumped in. They're incredible offensively. You have multiple all-MAC talents. They're just a dangerous opponent, and I think a dark horse candidate to go all the way here. Talk to me about that Iona-Manhattan matchup, though, because you also have Tobin Anderson, who, we're talking about Cinderella runs, not many more come to mind than, FDU, one of the greatest ever, second team ever to beat a 1 seed as the 16th seed. Tobin Anderson was the coach of that team before moving on to Iona and replacing Rick Pitino's job in the MAAC. So as you kind of look at that Iona-Manhattan matchup, two great coaches, two great teams, two teams that I believe can contend for a MAAC championship. Talk to me about kind of what your thought process is around that game.
Two of the hottest teams in the conference, actually.
Yeah.
You look at Manhattan having won 7 of 9 to end the regular season with a 7-man rotation. Now the Fraser Roxborough, the Australian wing off the bench, has come back for the Jaspers. They make up for the short rotation with a frenetic offensive style, the best offense, the most efficient offense in the conference per KenPom. They take a lot of threes. They like to frustrate you. They look for smart shots, and then they get right back in transition on defense as well. You talked about the multiple all-MAC talents between Will Sidnor and Devin Dinkins. The one player that I thought was unequivocally snubbed was Swish Gilliard, who I think should have been at least a second-team all-MAC honoree and wasn't even on any of them. He affects the game in so many ways. He's 6'3", but he plays like he's 6'8". He's gone for double-doubles multiple times this season. He's the team's leading rebounder. Despite his short stature, he makes up for it. You look at a guy like Wes Robinson, who can shoot threes, Shaq Bender, who can score in the backcourt, and Jaden Winston, who's one of the better pass-first point guards in the conference that could also get his own shot going. So Iona has a lot of weapons to contend with on this Manhattan side, but the Gales have weapons of their own with DeJour Reeves and Adam Njai, the two guards. One's a senior who will be coming back for one more year. Reeves has the extra year from junior college, and Njai is a freshman. Those two guards have demonstrated an ability to handle the ball and also create their own shots as well as get other people involved. My concern for Iona is going to be down low and whether or not Yafet Mundi can stay out of foul trouble against Sidnor and Robinson. If he can do that, I like Iona's chances, but I do think Manhattan, despite the short rotation, has the better front line, and if it's going to come down to a battle of physicality, I think the Jaspers prevail by a couple of points.
You think Manhattan moves on?
I do.
That's what I have as well. I think that's the best matchup you currently look at. I mean, obviously it should be with teams that were rewarded a first round bye, 2 days off to begin the tournament. And I think the other added element to this as well is they both split in the regular season. Manhattan really killed them the first time around, and then Iona kind of got the revenge in the second matchup. So I think that's just a whole other kind of added element to this game as well, is that neither team has really had the edge over the other this season. At first, you may have thought Manhattan kind of had that head-to-head advantage over Iona, but clearly the Gales responded with ease in that recent matchup. That was one of the only 2 losses Manhattan had in their final 9 games. But again, you also mentioned it, 2 of the hottest teams as well. I'm really looking forward to that game. I also have the Jaspers prevailing. And now, let's break down one more first-round matchup before we kind of break down our championship predictions and overall what we're thinking in this bracket. It's at the bottom of your bracket, fans. For those of you who are wondering, it's a 3-6 matchup. Marist versus Mount St. Mary's. I honestly feel like it is the complete opposite of the game we just described. two teams who like to play in more lower pace battles, both rely on their defense, and both are really cold right now, at least from my view, heading into the MAAC tournament. Marist losing 4 straight, losing out on the number 1 seed and the number 2 seed in this tournament. Jaden, what are we thinking?
Yeah, I think that'll probably be a high 50s, low 60s kind of game where Mount St. Mary's looks to slow you down defensively and take you out of what you're running. Marist with John Dunn plays what I like to call basketball quicksand, where they like to get you stuck in neutral, so to speak, and make it hard for you to do anything off the dribble, off the bounce. But my concern with Marist, they've lost, as you said, Chase, they've lost 4 in a row to end the regular season. I feel like they may have peaked a little too soon. Jackson Price has not been healthy for the last couple of weeks, so Josh Pasquarelli has had to do it alone for the most part.
And I do think it is good that they have. I mean, not to cut you off, but to win in sports, you do need a number 1 star, and that is the one thing that still keeps me somewhat attracted to Marist. If you're talking about a team that still could contend, because if their offense could just flow a little bit more, I mean, Pasquarelli, that's a first-team All-MAAC player who's just been so prolific for them on the offensive end this year.
Yeah, and Elijah Lewis has helped him out as well offensively. And then when you have a facilitator the likes of Jaden Collins Roberts, it makes things a lot easier for everybody. But Mount St. Mary's has the physicality edge. They have the front court edge as well with Dola Adebayo and JD Cordelia, who are interchangeable at the 4 and the 5 spot. Dallas Hobbs hasn't been 100%, but the Mount does have Carmelo Pacheco in the backcourt, and it seems like every time there's a big shot that needs to be taken, Pacheco not only takes it, but he usually makes it as well. And if it comes down to a late game situation where it's tied or 1 or a 2 point game, if Pacheco gets the ball, you have to expect that it's going in.
Let's take a quick pause from this Mount St. Mary's Marist game because we're going to put up Jack Mano's comment right here. We appreciate him again, one of our top viewers. Sienna Ryder, very, very close game right now, is right. 13 seconds to play on my ESPN view. 76-75 the score in favor of Ryder at the current time. Looks like it's hard to tell exactly what's happening. Unfortunately, I do not have the stream up right now of the actual game, but that's a great tight matchup. Who did you think was going to win that game? Because personally for me, while they're the 9th seed, it felt like Sienna's kind of been the 8th seed for a while, and I believe is the better basketball team. I thought they were going to pull away in that one, though Ryder was able to jump up to the 8th. Sienna was the favorite. Who did you have winning that game, and are you shocked by maybe what – I guess you can't really be shocked in this kind of a close game. We're tied at 76.
Yeah, I thought it would go either way. I had Sienna winning the game, but it wouldn't shock me if Ryder won. I was interested to see how Ryder would benefit and also try to capitalize off being the de facto home team in Atlantic City with a 45-minute commute from the campus to Boardwalk Hall. Ryder hasn't been able to make it work. 3 years ago, they beat Iona in the quarterfinals, but didn't have anything to show for it. It led to the St. Peter's Elite 8 run. Kevin Baggett has been on the hot seat going into this tournament for almost, it seems like every year that he's been the coach. So Ryder had a lot more to lose, but they also had a lot more to gain. It doesn't surprise me that they're up here, up and, 1 or now tied.
Jack Mano just wrote from our view, it's game. Layup from Tarek Ingram and 78-76 with little to no time to play. At one point, ESPN 95.4% chance of winning in favor of Sienna at one time when they were up 13 with 13 minutes to play. And now it looks like that the Ryder Broncos are going to move on to play the Quinnipiac Bobcats.
Yeah, and I just got a text. I just got a text. Oh my God, Ryder! So I assume that's what happened there. A last second shot to take the lead. Ryder and Quinnipiac will be a fun matchup.
Talk to me real quick about what that matchup's going to entail, what makes Quinnipiac dangerous before we get to our overall predictions.
Quinnipiac has the overall talent edge between Monroe, Otieno, Lewis, and also the shooting between Doug Young, Ryan Mabry, and Caden Bennett off the bench. They're just so deep and so complete. Not to sell Ryder short, but you're looking at less than a 24-hour turnaround between getting back in the rooms and then coming back out for a brief walkthrough and then shoot around tomorrow before the game. Ryder has to match defensive intensity because their legs may give out late in the second half. You want to play smart. You want to play within yourself. I do think Quinnipiac wins, but I'd like to see Ryder keep it close because the Bronx have been on this stage before and just haven't been able to close the deal.
What makes, for me, Quinnipiac so dangerous is the fact that, I mean, you're the only team you see on the All-MAAC first team that has two guys on that All-MAAC first team, Amari Monroe, Paul Tieno. Monroe, player of the conference. Once again, Pecora, coach of the conference. So it's a great overall team. On the women's side, they're thriving as well with the player and coach of the conference. It's kind of a Quinnipiac conference right now in a sense. So we did speak with Coach Carly Thibault-Dodonis yesterday on the women's side. What can happen there? You guys can check out that interview over here on the Chase of Sports News YouTube channel. Look, a great MAAC tournament to get into. There is one team that we have not mentioned yet, and it's for good reason. It's the MAAC Warriors, who I've had my mindset on this for a very long time, and I've stuck by it. I think the Warriors are going all the way in this conference. They, to me, have everything that you need. You have the defensive identity. You have great three-point shooting that if you get hot, nobody can stop in this conference. You have a great coach in Coach Joe Gallo who knows what he's doing, who knows how to scheme up, strategize a scheme against any opponent in this conference. They've proven they could beat the top teams in the conference. And, oh, yeah, that guy Bud Clark, he's pretty good. He's nationally known at this point. So, for me, MAAC is going all the way. I think MAAC is winning this and going to the NCAA tournament. And I actually think they're the type of team where if you can get a favorable seed, right now bracketology has the winner of the MAAC in a 16 play-in. If you could somehow get up to a 14 range, crazier things have happened. I'm absolutely all in on the Warriors, who I have going all the way here on this bracket. Jaden, how do you feel about that? What's your predictions for the remainder of this tournament?
So you do too, huh? I picked MAAC to win also. Now, as far as getting on the 14 line, I think a lot of carnage has to happen for the Warriors to get off the 16 line, let alone the 15 line. So we'll worry about that in the next few days and let the chips fall where they may. But I like MAAC a lot. I think they got a very favorable bracket. You talked about Bud Clark being just such a difference maker on both sides of the floor. You talk about Matt Beckton, his three-point shooting. Also, Brian Etumnu down low, the defensive player of the year in the MAAC, doesn't get enough credit for how he's translated his skill set and adapted to the league. He's a prototypical MAAC big at 6'7". He might be undersized to the casual fan, but he's definitely one of the bigger players above and at the rim in the conference. Sean Trumper provides some energy as well as maybe the forgotten man here in the rotation. Devin Savage can hit threes with the best of them as well, like Matt Becht. And Joe Gallo with his 2-3 zone has stifled many a team in this conference. I have a MAAC Manhattan final that wouldn't shock me if it was 57-53, where it's going to be a defensive masterpiece on both sides, and that's one that I would be looking forward to watching. I think MAAC just has the right variables here between the draw, the talent, and the style that can win 3 games in 3 days. They're a proven successful program, even though they have not gone to an NCAA tournament because of the transition from Division II. Joe Gallo has won at multiple levels. It's time he gets what's his and what he's been overdue for the past few years. I have MAAC cutting down the net.
And it would be unbelievable for them to do it in their first season in the conference. I mean, what a season it has been already, no matter what happens in the tournament. And I have MAAC doing it. Again, you're just talking about what a well-rounded team, and they're so difficult to stop on both sides of the ball. With, in my opinion, Monroe's great, Otieno's great, Pasquarelli's great. In my opinion, Bud Clark is the top player in this conference and nationally respected star across the country, both offensively and defensively. If you're going to go through this bracket, Ryder playing Quinnipiac. I got the Bobcats moving on there, playing the Jaspers. Just like you, I have the Jaspers upsetting Quinnipiac and going to the MAAC final to face MAAC, who I have beating Sacred Heart. I do think that the Pioneers are going to prevail in this matchup later today in just about 25 minutes, because I think offensively they just have too much firepower, and can Fairfield keep up in a fast-paced game like that? If the game is slower paced, I like Fairfield. That's going to be a great matchup. Then I have the Warriors beating Sacred Heart. I have Mount St. Mary's beating a Marist team that I feel like has just fallen off a cliff right now. and is not at a place to be winning playoff basketball games in Atlantic City. MAAC, kind of an easier route, playing a 7th seed and a 6th seed in my bracket, getting to the championship game and then beating the 5. MAAC, as you said, I'll quote you, cutting down the nets. Should be a great tournament. Jaden, any final thoughts before we wrap up?
No, you and I have the exact same prediction, so I don't want to repeat myself or repeat you. So we'll just keep it where it's at.
Jack Mano, our top viewer of the stream, we really appreciate you. MAAC just beat Quinnipiac recently, as he just mentioned there, a MAAC basketball fan, and Jack Mano. We really appreciate you joining. Jaden, we really appreciate you taking the time, guys. Daily Dose of Hoops, but spelt like his last name, Daly Dose of Hoops. A lot of great coverage over there, a great team with, again, great coverage of the MAAC and many other leagues across the New York City metropolitan area. Jaden Daly, thank you so much for joining me. It's going to be a great tournament in Atlantic City, and especially, again, this game in 25 minutes between the two in-town rivals of Fairfield and Sacred Heart.
Chase, thank you very much for having me on. You do great work yourself. Keep it up.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. We're going to wrap this up here. Again, Jack Mano, thank you so much, our top viewer of the stream. We appreciate everyone who has viewed throughout this stream. Signing off here alongside Jaden Daly of Daily Dose of Hoops. Be sure to check out Daily Dose of Hoops and follow him on all of his social media platforms. I'm your host, Chase Coburn, signing off as we have officially previewed the MAAC tournament. Stay tuned for our interview with Coach Gallagher of the Manhattan Jaspers, who we both have going to the championship game. But overall, our MAAC tournament preview coverage is soon to come to an end with the tournament beginning. Stay tuned for more coverage throughout the tournament right here on Chase's Sports News. Jaden, thank you for joining me. Thank you guys for viewing. I'm Chase Coburn, signing off.